Black CEO told to get lost by Receptionist. Minutes later, he shuts the entire company down. He walked through the doors like any other person on a Monday morning. No bodyguards, no big entrance, just calm steps and quiet confidence. His outfit was simple but flawless. Tailored sweater, polished shoes, a watch that only someone truly wealthy would recognize. People didn't stare. They didn't smile either. Some glanced at him, then quickly looked away. A security guard's eyes followed him a little too long. One woman clutched her purse a little tighter as he passed. He didn't flinch. He stepped up to the front desk. Behind, it sat a young receptionist with perfect hair and a bored expression. Her name tag read Ashley. She was tapping away on her phone, barely looking up. "Good morning," he said, his voice low and clear. "I have a meeting at 9 o'clock with Richard Lawson." Ashley's fingers paused for a moment, then started. Again. She didn't look at him. Name? Xavier Cole. Now she looked. Just a glance. Her eyes went from his dark skin to his clothes to the calm way he stood. Then she smirked. "Yeah, sure you do," she said. "Deliveries go through the back, alley entrance." She didn't wait for a reply. She was already back to her phone. He didn't move. He just looked at her quietly. "I'm not here for a delivery," he said. "Please check your calendar." Ashley rolled her eyes dramatically, then clicked something on her screen. But she didn't check anything. He saw that. Her fingers weren't even near the right keys. "Nope," she said with a fake pop of her lips. "No one by that name, no meeting. You can leave now." Before he could say another word, two security guards appeared. Big guys, tall, serious. Ashley stood and pointed at him. "This gentleman is refusing to leave." The guard stepped closer. "Sir," one of them said, "we need you to step outside." "I have a scheduled meeting," Xavier said again, calm but firm. "With Richard Lawson, it's on the executive calendar." "Let's go," the second guard said, grabbing his arm. Ashley crossed her arms and smirked like she had just won something. People in the lobby were watching now. Some looked amused, some uncomfortable. No one said a word. From the elevator, a man in a sharp suit stepped out, clearly someone in charge. He looked at Xavier and paused. A flicker of recognition passed through his eyes. He knew, but he didn't say anything. He just nodded at the guards and walked away. Xavier didn't fight. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look angry. As they pushed him toward the exit, Ashley leaned over and whispered in his ear with a cruel smile, "Maybe next time, dress the part. This isn't a welfare office." The words were soft, but they cut deep. Xavier stepped through the revolving doors without a sound. The glass closed behind him. The guards walked back inside. He stood still for a moment on the sidewalk, adjusting his sleeves. His sweater was wrinkled where they had grabbed him. He smoothed it out with slow, careful hands. Then, from his coat pocket, he pulled out his phone. He looked down at the screen, and he smiled, just a little. Inside the building, Ashley had already gone back to her phone, laughing, repeating the story to a coworker who had just arrived. "Can you believe the guy actually said he had a meeting with Richard?" She giggled. "Like, please. I knew he was lying the second I saw him." What Ashley didn't know, and what no one else in that lobby realized, was that the man they had just humiliated was Xavier Cole, the billionaire CEO of Cole Innovations, the most advanced cybersecurity company in the industry. And the meeting he mentioned? It was real, more than real. It was critical. Xavier had been considering a partnership that could save their company from financial collapse, until now. Now he had seen everything he needed to know, not just about their systems, but about their people. He didn't believe in shouting. He didn't believe in scenes, but he believed in consequences. And by the end of the day, the first ripple would begin. One no one in that building was prepared for. Not Ashley, not security, Not the executive who stayed silent. Not even Richard Lawson himself, and definitely not Brightwell Enterprises. Because Xavier Cole wasn't just any man. He was the man they had been desperately trying to impress for months, and now he was walking away. But not empty-handed. He was walking away with a decision, and for Brightwell, that decision would change everything. Xavier didn't rush. As the glass doors of Brightwell Enterprises slid shut behind him, he walked to the edge of the sidewalk and paused. The city was alive with traffic, people on calls, coffee in hand, all rushing to be somewhere. He wasn't in a rush. He looked up at the building. 40 stories of glass and pride. It had taken Brightwell just under a decade to reach this level of success. And if all had gone right today, it might have taken a step toward greatness. But now its future was already shifting. Xavier pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Jacob," he said, his voice low but clear. "Cancel my 11 a.m. and initiate the exit protocol. Today." The man on the other end didn't ask questions. He never had to. "Understood." Xavier ended the call. That one word, exit, would start something unstoppable. Emails would be triggered, calls placed, legal teams activated, and Brightwell's name? Well, it would begin disappearing from every project and plan it had once been part of. Back inside, no one knew yet. The receptionist laughed louder, confident she'd just handled another one of those random walk-ins. Security resumed their post, none the wiser. And the executive who had seen everything? He stood silently near the elevators, his face calm, but his palms damp. He had recognized Xavier Cole. Of course he had. You didn't sit through weeks of negotiations with a man like that and forget his face. But he had chosen silence, chosen comfort over courage. It had felt safe at the time. Meanwhile, across the city, in a much taller, quieter tower, Cole Innovations was alive and humming. At the top floor, Xavier stepped out of the elevator into his office, where the atmosphere was nothing like Brightwell. No one stopped him. No one stared. Everyone greeted him with respect, and more importantly, sincerity. His assistant approached immediately. "Mr. Cole, legal is ready on the line. Strategy and PR are assembling now." "Good," he replied, walking toward the glass wall of his office that offered a perfect view of the city skyline. "Let's not delay." He sat down, calm and collected, and placed his phone on the table. One tap, and he was connected to a room full of top legal experts. "This morning," he began, "I was publicly humiliated inside the lobby of a company that requested my partnership. Their executive team failed to intervene. Security physically removed me. Their receptionist, who represents the first impression of their brand, made racially charged assumptions and acted on them." Silence followed. Then, "Would you like to pursue a full breach response?" "No," Xavier replied. "There was no signed deal, no contracts, no breach, just decisions, and decisions have consequences." He leaned back in his chair. "We are terminating all communications with Brightwell Enterprises immediately. Redirect all potential IP sharing agreements to DataSphere. Also, prepare a brief for the press. Factual only. No anger, no emotion, just truth." His voice never rose. He wasn't angry. He was exact. And in that calm, there was something far more terrifying than rage. Outside his office window, the Brightwell building still shone. Unaware, it was already beginning to crumble. Elsewhere, another phone buzzed. Vanessa. Lewis looked at the screen, confused. The number was unknown. She stepped away from her desk at Brightwell, heart thudding. "Hello?" "Ms. Lewis," said a calm, familiar voice. "This is Xavier Cole." Her stomach dropped. "I saw you today," he continued. "Up on the mezzanine. You wanted to speak." "Up?" But I understand why you didn't. I know how expensive it is to tell the truth in places like Brightwell. Vanessa swallowed hard. Mr. Cole, I'm so sorry for what happened. I should have said something. I froze. You don't need to apologize. You observed. That matters more than you think. She didn't know what to say. Then came the offer. I've read your research. The neural security framework you built is years ahead of what they're using now. I'd like to talk, tomorrow, over breakfast, not about what happened, but about what comes next. Vanessa was stunned. Yes, of course. Thank you. Xavier ended the call. Back at Brightwell, none of this was known yet. Emails were still being sent. Coffee still poured. Ashley still bragged. But in that moment, their world was already beginning to shift. By the end of the day, they'd feel it. By the end of the week, they'd be drowning in it. Because when a man like Xavier Cole walks away, he doesn't just leave quietly. He leaves doors closed. He leaves reputations questioned. He leaves companies hollow. And most of all, he leaves with a plan. One that doesn't just punish the mistake. It rewrites the game completely. Back at Brightwell, nothing seemed out of place, at least not yet. The lobby had returned to its usual rhythm. Phones rang. Heels clicked across marble floors. A delivery guy was buzzed in. People passed each other without making eye contact. It was just another Monday. Ashley Monroe had settled back behind the front desk, sipping her iced coffee like nothing had happened. She was still smiling, still scrolling, still feeling proud of how she'd handled the situation earlier. In her mind, she'd put someone in their place, a man who didn't belong, a man she assumed couldn't have possibly had a real meeting upstairs. She hadn't even considered that she might be wrong. In the corner, a few interns were whispering. They had seen the moment security had grabbed the man. One of them had even tried to ask who he was, but Ashley had waved her off with a laugh. He said he had a meeting with Richard Lawson, Ashley had said mockingly. As if, no one like. That gets meetings with our CEO. The others had laughed with her then, not because they found it funny, but because they didn't want to be on the wrong side of someone like Ashley. Because in a place like Brightwell, small power often spoke the loudest. But upstairs, where the glass-walled boardrooms looked down on the city, things were already starting to shift. Junior analyst received an alert. One of Brightwell's major investors had just canceled a scheduled meeting. Down the hall, the CFO refreshed the company's financial dashboard and noticed something strange. A few automatic partnership notifications had suddenly gone inactive. She didn't know why, not yet, but the data didn't lie. And at that exact moment, across town, in a quiet, oak-lined conference room inside Cole Innovations, something else was happening. Xavier Cole stood at the head of a table filled with department heads from legal, PR, and acquisitions. His voice was calm, but every word landed with precision. There will be no formal statement attacking Brightwell, he said. No dramatic press release. That's not our style. He clicked a remote, displaying a screen that showed a name, Datasphere Technologies. But we will make it very clear who we're choosing instead. The room nodded. Xavier continued. Datasphere has been eager to work with us. They're small, but smart. And they've built a culture based on merit, not assumptions. His legal lead spoke up. You want us to pivot all future integrations to Datasphere immediately? Yes, Xavier said. Every project we were considering with Brightwell. Data, fusion, algorithm syncing, AI migration, move it all. No delay. What about the public reaction? Asked his head of PR. Xavier paused. People will talk. Let them. Truth doesn't need help spreading. Not anymore. He turned off the screen. Meeting over. He walked out without another word. By late afternoon, the first tremors began. A few of Brightwell's top engineers received cryptic texts from friends. In the industry. Did you hear? Cole pulled out. What happened this morning? One engineer checked his inbox and noticed something strange. An internal file he had sent to Cole Innovations earlier had been flagged, removed, and then replaced with an automated message, "Partnership on hold until further notice." Still, no one panicked. Yet. Meanwhile, back at Brightwell, Vanessa Lewis sat frozen at her desk. She had just finished her call with Xavier Cole, and her hands were still trembling slightly. She looked around the office. No one knew what had just happened. No one knew she had just spoken to the very man who had been pushed out of their building hours earlier. Her eyes scanned the room. The same people who had laughed when he was thrown out. The same people who had looked right through her for years. She had sat through meetings where her ideas were taken and rebranded by her manager. She had built tools used in products that no one ever credited her for. But today, someone had noticed. Someone with power. She opened a new document and began typing her resignation letter. It wasn't out of fear. It was a beginning. While she typed, Ashley was still downstairs bragging to another coworker. "I told him. Straight," she said with pride. "No meeting, no entry. End of story." The coworker raised an eyebrow. "Did you even check?" Ashley scoffed. "Trust me. You know how they act when they're trying to sneak in." Neither of them noticed the intern in the corner who had recognized Xavier Cole the moment he walked in, but said nothing. That intern was now quietly watching a livestock feed on her phone and saw the first red flag. Brightwell's stock had dropped 3% in an hour. It didn't make sense until it did. Just before the workday ended, Xavier made one last move. He sent a single email to Richard Lawson, CEO of Brightwell. It had no subject line, no attachments, just a few words. "Thank you for showing me your company's values before the paperwork was signed. We'll be moving in a different direction. No anger, no threats, just clarity." At 5:13 p.m., Richard opened that email in his office, read it twice, and stared at the screen like it might change. It didn't. He stood up slowly, walked to the window, and looked out at the skyline. He didn't know how, he didn't know when, but something in his gut told him this wasn't just a lost deal. This was the beginning of a reckoning. And the man they had pushed out of the lobby? He wasn't walking away in defeat. He was walking away with every advantage. It was just after 6 p.m. when the second shift was clocking in, and something in the air at Brightwell changed. What had started as a whisper was turning into a murmur, and that murmur was spreading like a cold breeze through every hallway, elevator, and Slack channel in the company. A senior project manager named Talia was the first to say it out loud in the team break room. "I think we lost the coal deal." Everyone around her froze. A younger developer blinked. "What? No, that's not possible. That meeting was supposed to finalize everything today." Talia slowly shook her head, showing them her phone. It displayed a screenshot of a tweet from a tech industry insider with thousands of followers. Breaking. Sources confirm Cole Innovations has pulled out of Brightwell deal. More to follow. The room went quiet. Downstairs in the lobby, Ashley Monroe was still riding high off her big moment earlier in the day. She was halfway through retelling the story again when her coworker Jennifer walked in, holding her phone like it had just bitten her. "Ashley," she said slowly, "you might want to see this." Ashley leaned over the desk and squinted at the screen. Her smirk faded. On the screen was a side-by-side comparison. One image showed the man she'd told to go around back, and the other was a glossy Forbes magazine cover. Same man, same face, same calm eyes. The headline read, "Xavier Cole, the billionaire quietly changing tech forever." Ashley stared at it, not breathing. Jennifer spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "He said his name was Xavier Cole, didn't he?" Ashley didn't answer. Her heart had dropped into her stomach. Upstairs, Richard Lawson was pacing in his glass-walled office. He wasn't looking at the city anymore. His attention was locked on his screen, on the email from Xavier. No threats. No drama. Just a clean, cold ending, It was more frightening than a lawyer's letter, because this wasn't just a business partner walking away. It was the business partner walking away, the one they needed to stay afloat. He grabbed his phone and dialed Mark Reynolds, the executive vice president. The same man who had seen Xavier earlier and said nothing. "Get to my office, now." 5 minutes later, Mark walked in, calm on the outside, but he could already feel the tension crackling in the air. Richard didn't even greet him. "You knew," he said sharply. "You saw him and you said nothing." Mark raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't sure. He didn't announce himself. He was alone." "He never announces himself," Richard snapped. "That's how he evaluates culture. That's what we knew when we started these talks." Mark stayed quiet. "And you let them throw him out," Richard continued, voice shaking now. "You let him be treated like some stranger off the street." Mark's face was tight. "Ashley should have verified." "Don't you dare throw this on a receptionist," Richard cut in. "This is on you. You were the most senior person in the lobby. You saw him, and you stood there like it wasn't your problem." For a long moment, the room was still. Mark looked away. Downstairs, Ashley was rewatching the security footage now playing on her coworker's phone. Someone had pulled it from the internal system and posted it online. The angle was sharp and clear, her voice raised, her hand grabbing Xavier's sleeve, the guards pushing him toward the doors. It had no sound, but it didn't need any. You could see everything in the body language. The sneer on her face, the way she leaned forward with something to say just before he left. In the comments, people were guessing what that last insult might have been. They were guessing right. Ashley's face was pale now. She opened her own Instagram, then Twitter. Her full name was trending. Receptionist who kicked out billionaire CEO. Someone had already found her LinkedIn. Screenshots, old photos, even her graduation announcement. The internet was turning her into a meme, and not the funny kind. Across the lobby, employees who had laughed with her earlier were now avoiding her gaze. Conversations dropped when she passed by. Jennifer leaned in and whispered, "You need to call someone. PR, HR, legal." Ashley couldn't speak. Upstairs, Richard's assistant stepped into the office. "Sir, media is calling. They want a statement about what happened this morning. Tell them no comment. And, sir, our biggest investor just requested a call." Richard looked up slowly. "What do they want?" "They're asking if we've replaced the coal deal, or if we plan to." He didn't answer, because they both knew the truth. There was no replacement. There wasn't even a backup plan. In the mezzanine above the lobby, Vanessa Lewis watched it all unfold from behind a glass railing. Her desk had a direct line of sight to the reception area. She saw the moment Ashley realized who Xavier was. She saw the color drain from Mark's face after Richard yelled. She saw the weight of consequences begin to settle over a building that had never really believed it was vulnerable. And tomorrow morning, she'd meet Xavier for breakfast, not just as a witness to what happened, but maybe as a part of something better. For now, she quietly began cleaning out her desk drawer. No drama, no statement. She was just getting ready, because everything at Brightwell was about to change, and she wasn't going to stay and watch it fall. She was going to be part of the future being built across town by the man everyone here had tried to ignore. By the next morning, Brightwell Enterprises wasn't just in trouble. It was a headline. Phones at reception rang nonstop, except no one was calling for meetings or job inquiries. Reporters, bloggers, influencers, and even cable news producers were all trying to confirm the same thing. Had Brightwell Enterprises really thrown out billionaire CEO Xavier Cole because they didn't recognize him, and worse, because of how he looked? Ashley Monroe barely made it through the doors without her phone buzzing out of her hands. Her name, her full name, was all over the internet. Someone had leaked the internal security footage, not a grainy clip, not from a phone camera. Actual security camera footage. Multiple angles. It showed everything. Ashley at the front desk. Her waving him off. Her sneering. The security guards grabbing him by the arm. One even pushing him from behind. No audio was needed. You could see the tone. You could feel the disrespect. By the time she sat at her desk, her inbox had over 800 new messages. Some were reporters. Some were strangers calling her names she didn't even know existed. Others were sarcastic. So, how's the delivery? Guy doing today? Maybe next time Google your guest before grabbing his arm? Her hands shook as she tried to log into the building system. Access denied. A red screen appeared where her dashboard should have been. She stared at it in disbelief. Moments later, Jennifer approached her from behind, whispering, "Ashley, HR wants to see you." Now. Ashley stood up, heart pounding. "Why?" Jennifer didn't answer. She didn't have to. Everyone in the lobby was watching. They weren't even trying to hide it. Some looked stunned. Others looked away. A few were clearly enjoying the show. Ashley walked slowly toward the elevator. The same one she had told Xavier Cole he wasn't allowed to use. Upstairs, the HR conference room was already set. A woman from legal sat with a company-issued tablet in front of her. Beside her, Brightwell's head of people operations. No smiles. No fake greetings. Just a printed folder with Ashley's name on the cover. "Please sit," the HR director said coldly. Ashley didn't speak. "We've reviewed the footage. We've reviewed employee statements. We've also been advised that Cole Innovations has formally severed all communication with Brightwell as a direct result of yesterday's incident." Ashley's throat was dry. "I didn't know." "That's the point," legal cut in. "You didn't care to know. You didn't check the schedule. You didn't verify his credentials. You judged someone based on how they looked and then physically grabbed him. You thought wrong." Ashley's eyes burned. "Your behavior reflects not only a violation of company protocol, but also created irreversible damage to our brand, partnerships, and financial future." Ashley's mouth opened. Nothing came out. The HR director slid a paper across the table. "This is your termination notice. Effective immediately. Your access is revoked. You'll be escorted to collect your personal belongings. You are required to sign this non-disclosure agreement as part of your exit." Ashley stared at the paper. The words blurred. She tried one last plea. "What about Mark Reynolds? He saw it happen. He said nothing. Why am I—" The HR woman didn't even blink. "Mr. Reynolds is also under investigation. But this conversation is about you." Ashley signed with a trembling hand. When she exited the room 10 minutes later, a quiet security guard stood nearby. He didn't say a word, just motioned toward the elevator. On the ride down, Ashley tried not to cry. Her palms were sweaty, her knees were weak. At the front desk, her box of things was already waiting. Coffee mug, framed photo, charger cable. The guard handed it to her gently. She nodded without speaking and walked toward the exit. For the first time, no one laughed. No one looked her way. She was already invisible, just another face on a story gone viral. Outside the building, a small group of reporters had gathered. Camera crews, boom mics, flashes. Ashley ducked her head and hurried past them, ignoring the shouted questions. "Were you the one who told him to use the service entrance? Is Brightwell racist? Do you think he'll sue you personally?" Kept walking. But the last question echoed in her mind louder than any of them. "Do you think he'll sue you personally?" Across the city, inside a quiet conference suite, Xavier Cole sat with Vanessa Lewis, sipping coffee as sunlight poured. Through the tall windows, Vanessa looked different. She was still wearing a professional outfit, still had that calm, sharp energy, but now something was lifted from her shoulders. She wasn't carrying fear. She was sitting with someone who had seen her. Xavier spoke, his tone measured. I saw the moment you wanted to speak. I've been there. Vanessa nodded. I should have said something. You will, he said. From the other side of the table, she blinked. I want to offer you a position, Xavier continued. We're expanding our AI security division. We need leadership, real leadership, the kind that's been overlooked in places like Brightwell. Vanessa's voice cracked just slightly. You mean me? I don't hire based on resumes. I hire based on results and heart, she nodded slowly. Then I'd be honored. The deal was done, but Xavier wasn't finished. Later that afternoon, a single email was sent to every major tech publication. Subject line, Cole Innovations withdraws from Brightwell deal. Body, due to serious concerns regarding the corporate culture observed during an unannounced visit, Cole Innovations has decided to terminate all partnership discussions with Brightwell Enterprises. Our team will be redirecting collaboration efforts to companies better aligned with our core values. No drama, no naming names. But the message was clear. Respect isn't optional. By nightfall, Brightwell's stock had dropped another 11%. The building wasn't just shaking now, it was starting to collapse. And Xavier Cole? He never raised his voice. He didn't need to. By Wednesday morning, Brightwell Enterprises had become a ghost ship still pretending to sail. The company's sleek glass exterior still reflected the rising sun. Inside, coffee machines still brewed, key cards still beeped, desks were still occupied, but everyone knew something was broken, and it wasn't going to be fixed. A deep, uneasy silence had settled over every floor. You could feel it in the eyes of the executives rushing between offices. You could see it in the way people whispered behind monitors. You could hear it in the tone of the team meetings that used to start with jokes and now opened with the same phrase. Let's just get through this. The real storm wasn't just coming. It had already begun. In the executive boardroom, Richard Lawson, CEO of Brightwell, stood in front of a giant screen showing the company's live stock performance. Every bar was red, every number falling. He hadn't shaved, his tie was off. His usually smooth voice cracked as he addressed the team. As of this morning, he said, we've lost 39% of our valuation. No one moved. And according to our legal team, Cole Innovations has formally ended all ties. Not just the partnership, not just tech integration. They've also notified Datasphere, Meridian Financial, and 6 of our shared vendors. Word is spreading fast. Someone in the room cleared their throat. What about our investors? Richard looked at his phone, then tossed it face down on the table. They're pulling out, one by one. And clients? Asked the CFO, voice already knowing the answer. 3 major ones gone, 2 more asking for meetings. The legal director spoke next. We also received notice this morning. There may be an SEC inquiry regarding our communications with Nexus Tech. The room shifted. Several people turned to look at Mark Reynolds, seated silently at the far end of the table. He didn't meet their eyes. Richard's voice was quiet now. Did you really think your emails wouldn't come out, Mark? Your personal account? Your back-channel strategy with our competitor? Mark finally spoke, defensive and tired. It wasn't betrayal. It was insurance. No, Richard said coldly. It was sabotage. You wanted the Cole deal to fail. Mark slammed his hands on the table. No one knew he was coming that day. You did, Richard said flatly. We have it on camera. Your face when you saw him in the lobby. You recognized him. And you turned away. Silence. No one defended him. At that same moment, on a lower floor, Vanessa Lewis was clearing out the last of her things. Her resignation was already submitted, her new position with Cole Innovations confirmed. She carried only 2 things, a laptop bag and a quiet sense of relief. Coworkers passed her with wide eyes. Some nodded in quiet respect. Others just looked confused. as if they still couldn't understand why she was the one getting out while the rest of them were stuck inside a collapsing machine. She didn't feel victorious. She felt free. Down in the lobby, Ashley Monroe sat in her car, parked outside Brightwell's loading dock. She hadn't told anyone she was there. She just couldn't drive home, couldn't move. The internet had already made her infamous. Job applications went unanswered. She'd deleted all her social media accounts. Even her apartment complex had received calls of concern from angry strangers. And this morning, her phone buzzed with a new notification. Subject: Notice of Legal Action. Xavier Cole Ashley opened it with shaking hands. The letter was brief and brutal. Xavier Cole was pursuing personal charges. Not against Brightwell. Against her, harassment, defamation, discrimination, $2 million in damages. She sat frozen, phone in her lap, unable to even cry anymore. Across the city, in a much calmer room filled with warm wood panels and soft lighting, Xavier Cole stood with his executive team. A large monitor displayed 3 glowing names: Cole Innovations, Datasphere, and Meridian Financial. Final confirmations? Xavier asked quietly. His COO nodded. Partnership secured. Tech integration underway. All systems green. Media. Xavier turned to his head of communications. She smiled slightly. Support is strong. The public's with us. And Brightwell? They're too busy falling apart to spin anything. Xavier nodded. He said nothing more. Because this wasn't about what they were doing anymore. It was about what he had stopped doing. No more saving them. No more giving them chances. No more overlooking what had been clear all along. They didn't just reject him in that lobby. They revealed themselves. And now, the market was holding up a mirror. Back at Brightwell, Mark Reynolds had been removed from the building. The board voted unanimously to terminate him. No severance, no stock options, no sympathy, and no one protested. Security watched as he packed up his corner office. His nameplate was gone by the time he hit the elevator. Inside, he scrolled through his contacts. Dozens of names, hundreds of connections, but no one was answering. No one wanted his name in their inbox right now. Back in the boardroom, Richard Lawson finally said what no one else dared to say. We may need to begin preparing Chapter 11 paperwork. That one sentence landed like thunder. He stared at the table. His fingers traced the edge of a pen he wasn't using. I built this company, he whispered. I gave it 20 years. No one replied, because 20 years of work had just been undone in 48 hours. Not by a hostile takeover, not by a global crash, not even by a technical failure, but by a moment of arrogance at the front desk. By the belief that someone with dark skin, walking in alone and without fanfare, couldn't possibly be the one holding their future. Now that future was gone. Not in anger, not in noise, but in a quiet walking away, in truth, and in consequence. 1 year later, the building that once held Brightwell Enterprises didn't look the same. Gone was the cold white marble, the harsh lines, the silent intimidation. Now, natural light poured in through warm glass panels. Walls were decorated with student projects, sketches of security systems, AI concepts, hand-drawn dreams. The lobby wasn't silent anymore. It buzzed. Young people filled the space, many black, brown, or from neighborhoods no one had ever recruited from before. Some wore hoodies, some suits, most in between. They laughed, debated, worked in teams. In the same spot where Ashley Monroe once sneered at a man she thought was out of place, a teenage girl now led a coding workshop. She stood with confidence, showing others how to spot vulnerabilities in a network. She hadn't gone to a private school. She didn't have connections, but someone believed in her. Above the entrance, the letters were bold and clear: the Cole Center for Innovation. Inside, Xavier Cole stood near the glass wall of a meeting room. He wore no tie, just a soft gray sweater and polished shoes. As always, understated, elegant, focused. Beside him stood Vanessa Lewis, now the executive director of the entire Cole Center project. She had started as a witness to injustice. She became a force for opportunity. They watched as the first graduating class of the Cole Fellows prepared for their final presentation, young innovators presenting their cybersecurity solutions to real-world challenges. Vanessa smiled. "They're ready?" Xavier nodded. "They've always been ready. They just needed to be seen." Across the city, Brightwell Enterprises was no more. What remained was being sold off piece by piece. The company filed for bankruptcy months ago. Lawsuits had followed. Investors vanished. Clients moved on. The building had been bought by Xavier's real estate firm through a silent shell company. No need to make a scene, just closure. Ashley Monroe now worked night shifts at a customer service center 2 cities over. The lawsuit had been settled, not for millions, but for accountability. She had issued a public apology, completed community service, and signed a settlement agreement that included education on workplace bias. Her life hadn't ended, but it would never be the same. She had learned the hard way that even small power has big consequences. Mark Reynolds had pleaded guilty to charges related to sharing internal files with a competitor. He served 6 months in a minimum security facility. His home was sold. His network was gone. His emails, the ones where he called Xavier overrated, a PR stunt, and not the real deal, had made their way to the press. He had been wrong about everything. Richard Lawson, Brightwell's former CEO, lived quietly now. No new roles, no comeback speeches. His name had faded from tech headlines. He reached out to Xavier once through a mutual contact, offered to consult on diversity initiatives. He never got a reply, but he did get the message. Some doors once closed, stay closed. Back at the Cole Center, the day's presentations wrapped with applause. Parents clapped, mentors smiled. A young woman walked up to Xavier afterward. She was barely 18, confident and curious. "Mr. Cole?" she asked. "Yes?" "My teacher says you built a billion-dollar company and never forgot where you came from. Is that true?" Xavier smiled gently. "I never had the luxury of forgetting." She nodded thoughtfully. "What was the hardest part?" He paused, then answered simply, "Being underestimated and choosing not to shrink because of it." She lit up. "That's what I feel too sometimes. Like people look at me and don't expect much. Then prove them wrong," Xavier said. "But not with anger, with excellence." She thanked him and ran off, her notebook clutched in one hand. Vanessa watched the exchange, then stepped beside him. "You've changed lives here." Xavier looked around, at the students, the walls filled with purpose, the future being built in real time. "No," he said quietly. "They're changing their own. We just made sure the doors were unlocked." Later that evening, Xavier returned to his office. Not the towering skyscraper where Brightwell once stood, but a modest space filled with books, art, and silence. He sat at his desk and opened a letter. It was handwritten, from a student at the Cole Center. It read, "Mr. Cole, my brother used to say guys like us would never work in tech, that the doors were closed before we even knocked. But your story, what you did, showed me that walking away can be power too. You turned your silence into a revolution. Thanks for making space for people like me. J." Xavier folded the letter gently and placed it in a drawer beside, a growing collection of similar notes. This, not the headlines, not the money, was the real reward. He didn't destroy Brightwell. He just stopped saving them from themselves. And in that space, he built something better, something lasting, something honest. The next morning, as the sun rose over the city, the Cole Center opened its doors again. More students, more possibilities. Because real legacy isn't what you build for yourself. It's what you leave standing when you're gone. And Xavier Cole wasn't building towers anymore. He was building bridges. For every kid who had ever been told they didn't belong. For every innovator passed over because they didn't look the part. For every future that had once been out of reach. He wasn't loud. He wasn't angry. He was just clear. Respect is earned, so is failure. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away with dignity and let the world watch as you rise.